The sound of Derek's voice still echoes in my head. "Pack your stuff and get out, old man. This is my house now. 4 days. That's how long my son-in-law waited after we buried Michael before he kicked me out of what he thought was his home. 4 goddamn days after I lost my boy." I'm Frank Thompson, 58 years old, and I've been keeping a secret for 22 years that's about to change everything. Let me back up a bit. Michael was my only son, 28 years old, worked construction like his old man. Good kid, hard worker, the kind who'd give you the shirt off his back. He married Derek's sister Emma 2 years ago, but she took off to California last year when she couldn't handle Derek living with them anymore. Can't say I blame her. When Emma left, she gave Derek $15,000 from her grandmother's inheritance to help with expenses while he got back on his feet. That was 8 months ago, and Derek was still spending it on DoorDash and video games. Derek Walsh is 29, works part-time selling insurance when he feels like it, spends most of his time playing video games and coming up with get-rich-quick schemes. The kind of guy who thinks the world owes him something just for showing up. Michael let him crash at the house after Emma left, thinking it was temporary. Derek had other ideas. See, Derek always assumed this place belonged to Michael. Made sense, I guess. Michael lived here, paid the utilities when Derek's inheritance money ran low, took care of the yard. What Derek didn't know is that I bought this house back in 2002 for $180,000 cash from my electrical contracting business. Put it in Michael's name so he'd have somewhere to live, but kept the deed details to myself. I had my reasons. Wanted to see what kind of man he'd become without thinking Daddy's money was backing him up. Wanted him to earn his own respect. And honestly, after seeing how entitled some kids get when they know they're inheriting something, I figured it was better this way. Michael was 6 when I started Thompson Electric. Used to bring him to job sites on weekends, let him hold my flashlight while I ran wire through crawl spaces. Even as a little kid, he understood that you earn what you get. By the time he was 12, he could wire a basic outlet. By 16, he was working summers with my crew, learning the trade from the ground up. "Dad, why do you make me start at the bottom when you own the company?" he asked me once when he was 17, sweating his ass off digging trenches for underground cable, "because someday you might own it too," I told him, "and you better know every job before you ask someone else to do it." That's the kind of man I raised. Michael never asked about ownership of anything. He was grateful to have a roof over his head and worked his ass off to make something of himself. Became a foreman by 25, had his own crew, earned every bit of respect he got. Derek, on the other hand, moved in and immediately started acting like he owned the place, started bringing his girlfriend, Brittany, over, a 26-year-old retail manager who has champagne tastes on a beer budget. They'd order takeout every night, leave dishes in the sink, blast music until 2 a.m. Derek would sleep until noon, play video games until dinner, then complain about how hard life was. Michael was too nice to say anything, but I could see it was wearing on him. "Dad, I don't know what to do about Derek. He told me a few weeks before the accident. Emma's money is almost gone, he won't get a real job, and Brittany's pushing him to ask me for loans." "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Kick him out, honestly. But he's Emma's brother, and she asked me to look after him until he got stable." "And how's that working out?" Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. About like you'd expect. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning. Michael was working a job site downtown when a crane operator made a mistake and dropped a load of steel beams. Michael saw it coming, pushed 2 guys out of the way, but couldn't get clear himself. They said he died instantly. Small comfort, but at least he didn't suffer. At the funeral, Derek played the grieving brother-in-law perfectly. Hugged me, said all the right things about how Michael was family and how we'd get through this together. Even volunteered to help with arrangements, though mostly that meant standing around while other people did the work. I actually thought maybe losing Michael might wake him up, make him realize life's too short to waste. Maybe he'd finally step up, get serious about supporting himself, honor Michael's memory by becoming the man his sister thought he could be. I was wrong. Friday morning, 4 days after we put Michael in the ground, Derek knocked on my bedroom door at 7 a.m. with an eviction notice he'd printed off the internet. "Frank, I need you to understand something," he said, standing there in his pajamas and flip-flops like this was casual conversation. "This house is mine now. Michael left it to me. I've got Brittany moving in next week, and we need the space." I stared at him. This kid who'd been freeloading for 8 months, who'd never paid a dime of mortgage or property tax, who couldn't even be bothered to mow the lawn without being asked 3 times. "Michael left you the house? Yeah, we talked about it. He said if anything happened to him, I should take care of the place. So I need you to pack up and find somewhere else to live. The balls on this kid. No will, no paperwork, just his word that my dead son promised him a house he didn't even own. Where exactly am I supposed to go? I asked. Derek shrugged. Not my problem, man. Maybe one of those senior living places. You're getting up there in age anyway. Getting up there in age. I'm 58, in better shape than this couch potato will ever be, and he's talking about me like I'm ready for a nursing home. You're serious about this? Dead serious. I already called a locksmith yesterday while you were at the lawyer's office. Changed the locks. For security reasons. Here's your key. He handed me a single house key. You've got until Sunday to get your stuff out. That's when I knew Derek Walsh had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I took the key and nodded. All right, Derek. You want me out? I'll be out by Sunday. The smile that spread across his face made me sick. Thanks for being cool about this, Frank. I know it's hard, but Michael would want me to take care of things now. After he left, I sat on my bed and looked around the room I'd been sleeping in for the past 2 months since Michael got busy with that downtown project. Derek thought he was evicting a broke old man with nowhere to go. What he didn't realize is that Frank Thompson owns 4 properties in this neighborhood worth a combined $1.2 million. The house Derek just kicked me out of was worth $180,000 when I bought it. The duplex on Maple Street I picked up in 2008 for $220,000. The small apartment building on Pine Avenue cost me $280,000 in 2015. And the corner property with the retail space downstairs that I bought last year for $520,000. All bought with cash from Thompson Electric, all titled in my name, all generating rental income that Derek never bothered to ask about. Time to show this entitled little shit what real ownership looks like. I spent Saturday packing my clothes and personal items. Derek and Brittany were in the living room planning their new life in their house. I could hear Brittany talking about redecorating, maybe knocking down the wall between the kitchen and dining room to make it more open concept. Derek was on his laptop shopping for furniture, something about needing a bigger couch for their gaming setup. We should get one of those sectionals, Brittany was saying, and maybe a 75-inch TV for the living room. Derek, didn't you say Michael had some money saved up somewhere? I'm still looking for that, Derek replied. But don't worry, babe. We'll have plenty of cash once I sell some of this old man's tools and stuff. My tools. Michael's tools. Tools that 3 generations of Thompson men had used to build their lives, and this parasite was already planning to pawn them. Sunday morning came, and I loaded my truck with my belongings. Derek watched from the front window, probably making sure I wasn't stealing anything that he now considered his. When I finished, I walked up to the front door and knocked. Just wanted to say goodbye, I told him when he answered. Yeah, sure. No hard feelings, right, Frank? Maybe we can grab a beer sometime. Brittany appeared behind him, already measuring the doorway with her eyes. Derek, ask him about the garage code. And where does he keep the lawnmower manual? Maybe we can grab that beer, I said. Oh, and Derek, this is for you. Don't open it until I'm gone. I handed him an envelope. Derek took it, looking confused but pleased. Probably thought it was cash, or maybe the garage door opener manual. I got in my truck and drove exactly 1 block before parking, where I could still see the house. Then I called Margaret Patterson, the lawyer who's been handling my real estate deals for 15 years. Margaret, it's Frank. Time to move forward with what we discussed. Are you absolutely sure about this, Frank? She asked. Once we start this process, there's no going back quietly. I watched Derek's house through my windshield. Through the window, I could see him opening the envelope I'd given him. Any second now. I'm sure. He made his choice. Time he learned about consequences. The envelope contained copies of the property deed showing my name as owner, tax records for the past 22 years showing Frank Thompson paying every bill, and a formal 30-day notice to quit the premises. All legal, all documented, all about to ruin Derek's day. I saw Derek's silhouette freeze in the window. Then he was moving frantically, probably reading the documents over and over. The front door flew open and he ran outside in his socks, looking up and down the street like a crazy person. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Derek's number. Frank! Frank! What the hell is this paperwork? This has got to be some kind of mistake. No mistake, Derek. That's the deed to the house you just kicked me out of. Notice my name on it?" Silence. I could hear Brittany in the background asking what was wrong. "This is impossible," Derek finally said. "Michael owned this house. He lived here for years. He paid the utilities. Michael lived here because I let him live here. I bought this house in 2002 with cash from my business. Check the county records if you don't believe the documents. But you can't just... I live here now. I changed the locks. I have rights. You have the right to find somewhere else to live in the next 30 days. That's about it." I could hear Derek's voice getting higher, more panicked. "You're lying. Michael told me this place would be mine if anything happened to him. Michael never owned this place to give away. And even if he did, where's the will? Where's any paperwork saying he left you anything?" More silence. Because Derek knew there wasn't any paperwork. There was no will because Michael was 28 years old and thought he had decades ahead of him. There was no promise because Michael was too smart to promise away something that wasn't his. "I'm not moving," Derek said finally. "You can't make me. Actually, I can. It's called eviction, and the legal process starts tomorrow morning." 30 days, Derek. Use them wisely. I hung up and called Margaret back. "Draw up eviction papers, make it official, already on it. I'll have them filed by tomorrow afternoon." "Perfect. And Margaret, make sure everything's by the book. I want this case to be ironclad." The next few weeks were better than cable TV. Derek hired a lawyer, some kid fresh out of law school who probably thought he had an easy case until he ran the property records. Once he saw that Frank Thompson had owned the house for 22 years, paid every tax bill, held clear, title with no liens, that lawyer's enthusiasm disappeared real quick. Derek tried everything he could think of. He claimed Michael had promised him the house verbally, but promises don't override property law. He said Emma's inheritance money gave him tenant rights, but $15,000 spent on takeout and video games doesn't establish ownership. He even tried to argue adverse possession, which made his lawyer wince because you need 18 continuous years in Colorado, and Derek had been there 8 months. Meanwhile, I set up shop in my rental property across town and watched Derek's world start falling apart. First thing I noticed was Brittany getting nervous about the legal troubles. She'd show up less and less, and when she did come by, I could see her through the window having heated conversations with Derek, a lot of pointing and arm waving. Then one day her car stopped showing up altogether. Derek tried calling her, but word around the neighborhood was that Brittany had moved on to dating some guy who managed a car dealership. Apparently, legal troubles and eviction notices weren't the lifestyle upgrade she was looking for. With Brittany gone and his lawyer bills piling up, Derek got desperate. He started trying to sell Michael's things to pay for his defense. First, I'd see him loading tools into his car, then furniture, anything that looked valuable enough to turn into quick cash. What Derek didn't know is that I'd been doing business in this town for 25 years. One phone call to Tom's pawn shop, and suddenly nobody wanted to buy anything Derek was selling. "Sorry, man," Tom told him when Derek showed up with Michael's Craftsman tool chest. "Word is there's some kind of legal dispute about this stuff. Can't touch it until things get sorted out." Derek tried the other pawn shops in town. Same story. Then he moved on to eBay, listing Michael's guitar collection, some power tools, even the riding mower. I had my buddy Tony place the winning bids on everything, then never complete the payments. Derek had to relist items multiple times, and eBay eventually suspended his account for too many non-paying bidders. The kid was running out of money fast, and his fresh out of law school attorney was getting tired of working for promises instead of payments. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was watching this whole drama play out, and let me tell you, Derek wasn't winning any popularity contests. These were people who'd known Michael since he was a teenager, watched him grow up to be a stand-up guy. They remembered him shoveling Mrs. Peterson's driveway every winter without being asked, helping old Mr. Garcia fix his fence after the windstorm, always lending a hand when someone needed it. Derek? Derek was the guy who played music too loud, left his trash cans in the street after pickup day, and never so much as waved when neighbors said hello. Now he was trying to steal a dead man's house from his grieving father. Carol Martinez, who lived 2 doors down, stopped by. My rental one evening with a casserole and some neighborhood intel. "Frank, I hope you don't mind me saying, but everyone's rooting for you," she said. "That boy Derek has been nothing but trouble since he moved in. Just last month he backed into the Johnsons' mailbox and never even apologized." "What's the word around the block?" I asked. "Well, Derek's been going door to door trying to get people to sign some kind of petition saying Michael promised him the house. Nobody's signing it. Mrs. Clark told him to get off her property. Mr. Rodriguez said if Derek bothered him again, he'd call the police. 6 weeks after I served him papers, Derek called me again. The cocky attitude was gone, replaced by something that sounded like panic. "Frank, look, maybe we can work something out here. I know you're upset about how I handled things after Michael died, but we're family, right? Can't we figure this out?" "We're not family, Derek. Michael was my family. You're just some guy who was freeloading off my son. Come on, man, where am I supposed to go? I can't afford rent anywhere on what I make. Should have thought about that before you kicked me out of my own house. I didn't know it was your house, because you never bothered to ask. You just assumed you could take whatever you wanted." I could hear him getting desperate. "What if I pay you rent? I could give you $800 a month." "Derek, do you have any idea what it costs to own a house? Property taxes on that place are $2,100 a year. Insurance is another $200. Basic maintenance and repairs, figure $2,000 annually. That's $440 a month just in carrying costs, and that's before we talk about mortgage payments if there were any. I don't have that kind of money. I know you don't. That's why you're getting evicted." The truth was, Derek had never bothered to learn what anything cost because he'd never paid for anything himself. Emma's inheritance money had covered his food and entertainment for 8 months. Michael had covered utilities, and Derek figured that was just how life worked. "What if I get a full-time job?" he asked. "I could start Monday?" "Doing what? You've been half-assing part-time insurance sales for 2 years. What full-time job are you going to get that pays enough to cover $2,500 a month in housing costs?" Silence. Because we both knew there wasn't one, at least not for someone with Derek's work history and attitude. "Please, Frank, I'll do anything. I'll sign a lease. I'll put down a deposit, whatever you want. Here's what I want, Derek. I want you out of my house by the deadline. I want Michael's tools and belongings left exactly where they are. And I want you to stop telling people that my son promised you something he never owned. But where am I supposed to go? That's what you should have been figuring out for the past 6 weeks instead of fighting a legal battle you can't win." Derek's final deadline was a Thursday in November. I drove by Wednesday evening and saw a U-Haul truck in the driveway. Derek and 2 guys who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else were loading furniture in boxes. The helpers looked miserable, probably friends who'd been promised beer and pizza for an afternoon of work and ended up moving someone's entire life. Thursday morning, I met Margaret at the house for the final walkthrough. Derek was standing in the empty living room with 2 suitcases and a garbage bag full of clothes. "This isn't over, old man," Derek said when he saw me walk in. His voice was shaky, like he'd been crying or hadn't slept. "I'm going to fight this. I'm going to appeal." "With what money? Your lawyer dropped you last week when you couldn't pay his retainer." That hit home. Derek's face went red, and for a second I thought he might take a swing at me. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, joke's on you. I trashed this place. Good luck fixing all the damage." I looked around. Some holes punched in the drywall, a broken window in the kitchen, cabinet doors hanging off their hinges. Typical tantrum damage from someone who never learned to handle disappointment like an adult. "Insurance will cover it," I said. "Plus, I'll be deducting the repair costs from your security deposit." "What security deposit? I never paid you a security deposit?" "No, but Michael did when he moved in here at 18. $2,500. Should cover most of the damage you just admitted to causing in front of witnesses." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He grabbed his suitcases and stormed toward the door, muttering threats under his breath about lawyers and appeals that we both knew would never happen. "Hey, Derek," I called after him. "Where are you headed?" He stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "My mom's place in Lakewood." "Carol Walsh still living in that basement apartment on Union?" Derek's shoulders sagged. "Yeah, poor Carol." Derek's mother worked as a bookkeeper for Henderson Construction, a company I'd done electrical work for over the years. Good woman, raised 3 kids on her own after Derek's father took off. Derek was her youngest, and she'd been bailing him out of problems his whole life. Now she gets to deal with her 29-year-old son moving back into her basement. After Derek left, I walked through the house Michael had called home for 10 years. The damage was mostly superficial, the kind of thing you do when you're mad at the world, but don't really know how to break anything expensive. Drywall patches, a new window, some cabinet hardware, nothing that couldn't be fixed in a weekend. In Michael's bedroom, I found something Derek had either missed or chosen to leave behind. A photo album tucked behind the dresser full of pictures from Michael's life. Me teaching him to wire his first outlet when he was 12. His high school graduation, the day he got his journeyman electrician license. The last photo was from Christmas 2 years ago, Michael and Emma opening presents, both of them laughing at something off camera. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about teaching Derek Walsh a lesson about entitlement. This was about preserving what Michael had built, honoring the kind of man he'd become, making sure his life meant something beyond just the 28 years he got. I called my insurance company to start the repair process, then contacted a property management company I'd worked with before. The house would be ready for new tenants by January. 3 months later, I rented the place to Jake and Maria Santos, both teachers, with a 4-year-old daughter named Sophia and another baby on the way. Good people who understood the value of having a decent place to live and took care of what they had. Their rent was $1,400 a month, which covered my costs and put a little extra toward maintenance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek could have stayed in that house if he'd just shown some basic respect and gotten himself together. Instead, his sense of entitlement cost him everything. But my story with Derek Walsh wasn't completely over. About 6 months after the eviction, I ran into Carol at Henderson Construction when I was bidding on a rewiring job. She looked older, more tired than I remembered. "Frank Thompson," she said when she saw me, "I owe you an apology for my son's behavior. What he did was inexcusable." "How's Derek doing?" I asked. Carol sighed. "Not good, honestly. He's working at a call center part-time, driving for one of those food delivery apps on weekends. Spends most of his time playing video games and complaining about how unfair life is. Still living with you?" "For now." I told him he's got until his 30th birthday to figure something else out. I can't keep enabling him forever. I thought about that conversation for weeks afterward. Derek was 6 months away from 30, still living in his mother's basement, still convinced the world owed him something he hadn't earned. Some people never learn. Meanwhile, I kept building my little real estate portfolio. The Santos family was thriving in Michael's old house. Sophia started kindergarten at the school 2 blocks away, same school Michael had attended 20 years earlier. Jake built a workshop in the garage where Michael used to work on his truck. Maria planted a garden in the backyard. That's what Michael would have wanted for the place. People who appreciated it, who understood that a home is something you build with your hands and your heart, not something you're entitled to just because you show up. Derek Walsh never learned that lesson. But maybe that's okay. Some people are meant to be examples of what not to do. Warnings for the rest of us about what happens when you mistake entitlement for inheritance, assumption for ownership. I sleep better now than I have in years, knowing Michael's memory is honored by people who understand what he valued: hard work, respect, and taking care of what you're given. That's the thing about real ownership. It's not just about having your name on a deed. It's about earning your place, showing respect, and understanding that everything worth having comes with responsibility. Derek Walsh figured that out too late.